Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Cedric Alford. I will be the professor for JWI 580 this term, and this class is called Introduction to Business Analytics. The agenda that I have today is to, first of all, welcome you to the class, which I am doing now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Also, I'm going to give you an idea of who I am, my family, and kind of who my teams are and what I do, and my background and experience. We'll have a course at a glance, and then we'll talk about assignments and grading, some of the resources you have available to you, and then questions and answers. Now, I will say that because this will be a recorded session, I encourage you, if you have any questions, and I say any, that's in quotes, that's in all caps, that's underlined, any questions at all, please shoot them over to me. I am available for you. And then the last thing that I think most of you guys will be quite excited about, we will adjourn the session. So about me. So I have a wife and two kids. My kids are 26 and 19. So they are 7 years apart. That young man who I try to look like every day, his name is Tyler. And he is on the drum line at Iowa State University. He is a senior there. My daughter, Alexia, she is a PhD student in her final year teaching and learning at Iowa State. So she'll be Dr. Lex in probably about another year. My wife, Benita, met her in a little small town in Texas called Tyler, Texas, where they're really known for Tyler roses. And me, I am the son of a Southern Baptist minister, and I have lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for about 40 plus years. My teams, and I encourage you guys to respect my teams and don't talk about them, are the Dallas Cowboys, Iowa State University Cyclones, the Dallas Mavericks, anything from Dallas basically, and anything out of Texas, and of course, anything that has Team USA on it. I'm all about my patriotism and things of that sort. Now, in terms of my academic history, I started out my career in a traditional sense in terms of studying electrical and civil engineering at the University of Texas at Austin. I struggled a little bit, like some of us probably did when we first started, but my struggle was not as much academic as it was me trying to decide if I wanted to be an engineer or if I wanted to be a jazz musician. I ended up leaving college to go on the road touring and things of that sort earlier in my life. So I had a lot of fun back then, met my wife and my kids, and now the rest is history. I didn't meet my kids, but met my wife, had our kids, and the rest is history. So outside of the first studies in electrical engineering, I have a BS in business management. I have an MBA in marketing, and I also have a doctorate in management. I have around 22, 23 years of professional experience, and about 15 to 17 of that, I need to update the slide, 15 to 17 of that is really in the area of strategic and C-level consulting. So look forward to engaging you guys in some of that conversation. In my free time, I support my son on the drum line, and it's awesome because both of my kids go to the same university. So while we're supporting him, we're able to support our daughter as well. And I do a lot of things in the community. And one of those things is something I'm very excited about, is being the chairman of the board of a location called Viola's House. And we focus on homeless, teenage, and pregnant girls. So, if you can imagine that. So that's about me, and I want to make sure you guys understand that, hey, I'm a professor, I'm a real person, I have a life, I have family, I have my teams and things of that sort, just like you guys do. So as you start to get emails, I want you to know that Dr. Alford is a real human being, okay? So let's move on. One of the things that we do at Microsoft, where my current role is, I'm responsible for the global co-selling of the Microsoft and Adobe organizations. And when I say global, I have been over the entire world. Right now, my focus are on the major markets of the Americas. But as I've looked at my career, one of the things that we do at Microsoft is create what's called a career graph, and we call this a walking deck as well. But I wanted to share with you guys, just this deck here. Take your time, and I'll pass this out here. I'll post this particular presentation, and then I will share with you the PowerPoint of it as well. But take a look at this, and you can kind of see what I've been doing ever since around 1994. And I encourage you guys to take a look at this as well, mostly from the standpoint of as you think about all these little awards or recognitions that you got, where do you put all of that? How do you leverage that? And one of the things that I've been doing over the years is just continuing to add different bits and pieces to this particular career graph. Now, as you can see in purple, my career started out as an intern. And when you think about my Microsoft experience right now, being a global leader at Microsoft, it's amazing to go from an intern all the way to that. But one of the areas that I wanted to point out as well is that as it relates to this class, in every single role that I have had since I was an intern, it's always had some aspect of analytics. I remember as an intern, I had a boss and mentor. His name was Sudamaya Lathu Parani Apan, and he was probably one of the smartest men I'd ever met in my life. Not only did he write textbooks in India, but when we would do our data and analysis, we would have all of our wonderful engineering calculators out, and he would just eyeball it and could tell that it was wrong. So one of the things that I learned from him early on is the benefit and the value of focusing first on is the data right before you start to make the data pretty. So with that being said, as an intern, I learned a lot of things. And as I moved through my career, being a planner of bus and rail operations, urban planner, to moving as an IT analyst, when the web came about in 1988, 99, being a researcher there, getting data online, and then eventually evolving to director of program management, director of integrated data solutions, VP of marketing automation, et cetera, et cetera. Every single year, I have added depth to my analytics capability and analytics background. Now, why am I sharing all that with you? Well, the reason is I've spoken with several of you before the class has begun. And one of the things that you were very fearful of is, oh my gosh, I knew this class was about all of that. Well, the reality here is that that's not what this class is about. What this class is about is taking data, okay, and this data is already produced, so you're not having to really do a lot of analytics, you're doing analysis, but taking this data and then making sense of it. I have quite a bit of experience on the dark side of data, doing the models and all of those wonderful things. And as you look at my career, over 20 years of that stuff. But that's not what this class is. But I wanted to share this with you just to give you an idea of my background and my experience in analytics, because we can pretty much go very deep if some of you want to do that. But that's not the intent of this class. And I encourage you guys to give the class an opportunity. So when we think of that, what is the intent of this class? Okay. When you look at the book, Keeping Up with the Quants, I have read this book a couple times, I think now, and I'm really impressed with it. Now, certainly it doesn't go in some areas that my experience says that it should go or whatever, but the reality is that because this is an introduction to business analytics class, I do feel that if you guys read every chapter that's assigned, I think the first 5 chapters of this book, you'll get a very good understanding of how not only does analytics help solve problems, but who are the people and the roles that's involved and how should you work with them. So as we think about the learning outcomes of this class, develop habits of quantitative thinking. Now, there's a big difference here. So a lot of us develop habits of qualitative thinking, meaning we're kind of, like, oh, it seems like this, or it may be that, or I guess it could be this in terms of you trying to problem solve. But what we're saying is how do you replace some of the qualitative views, guesswork, and then really pull in some quantitative thinking. Now, I'm not saying that just because it's quantitative, it's right, but it does get you a little closer to being able to validate and defend what you think. Framing problems and predicting potential results. One of the key aspects of this class is giving you a framework of how to frame a problem. And when you frame the problem, what you're doing is you're identifying a specific problem you're trying to solve. And if there are multiple problems that are there, you're just going to look at those as a separate problem. But having a framework of that problem will allow you to focus on a solution that will solve that problem. It reminds me of when I was doing my dissertation, I focused on a phenomenological study of women and how they achieved and sustained leadership roles in technology. Believe it or not, guys, it took me about a year and a half to come down to that one problem that I'm trying to figure out. Women are not moving up in technology, and why? Because it was so interesting. My advisors were telling me, you're trying to solve too many problems at one time. Solve one problem, okay, get out of the program, and then go solve world peace. That's what we're saying here. Framing the problem will help you to focus. Once you have framed that problem, how do you gather and analyze relevant data? Now, what's important about this class is the gathering and the analyzing process. We're doing that for you. This is only a 5-week class, guys. I mean, if you really do some true gathering and analyzing, it'll probably take you 5 months to get that data, cleanse that data, validate that data, vet that data, etc. But what we're doing here is we're giving you the problem that's a part of this Harvard case study, and the data that you will need to solve it is there. What you're just needing to do is to make sense of it and then kind of pull it into like, hey, it looks like this, and as a result of that and based off of the framing, this is the way that I'm going to go after that approach that I have decided. And then analyzing data and interpreting the results. The data analysis part is quite important. And one of the things that I find that I think that you guys should be aware of, I am not grading you on right or wrong. The Harvard business case has an approach that is all about right and wrong. But the way that I'm grading you on is, are you following the framework? Because the reality is that this class is not about you solving the Harvard business case. It's about you understanding the framework of business analytics. And as you start to read that case study that's out there, and I encourage you guys to pre-read it, as you start to read that, you may have different ideas than Harvard does. Well, we call that innovation. So what I'm saying is, just when you create your own thinking and you're looking at that data and you're seeing different things, what this class is about is showing you a framework of how to defend your thoughts and your suggestions. Finally, formulating and communicating actionable recommendations. That is so important. I have seen so many students, I have seen so many employees, I have seen so many colleagues and teams that have had exceptional ideas and analyses that went absolutely nowhere because they had not put in the time, as my previous, let's say, coach and advisor told me, to make it look pretty. And when I say pretty, what I'm saying is that it's not just about colors on a page, but it's also about identifying the appropriate approach for presentation of the type of data that you are producing. So will it be a bar graph? Will it be a more innovative line graph, a scatter plot, and things of that sort? Sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. Sometimes it's the chart that's worth even greater. I was recently at a meeting with our most senior executives, one click below the CEO of Microsoft. And one of the interesting things that came out of that meeting is that we had a lot of data to share with how the business was going. And what he asked for is, I just want one slide, guys. I want you to sum up our entire business in one slide. So the tough part for you guys is that you have so much that you want to share about what's come out of the last few weeks, okay, 5 weeks that we're going to be working on this, but it's really important for you to identify what is the one you feel that tells the story the best. So my last point here is that as we think of the course descriptions and learning outcomes a part of this class, it's important for you to know the framework, to frame the problem, be able to analyze, and be able to communicate the results. But it's also important for you to find your voice in those results. And for that reason, I want to make sure that you guys understand this next slide, okay? Is this a statistics class? All right. I don't know how else to say it, so I just put every language out here that I could find. No, this is not a statistics class. No matter how you are reading into this, no matter how apprehensive you are, no matter the fact that you guys are going to be graduating really soon and you don't want this class to impact what you are currently doing. This is not, no, and that's about the only language I speak, I hate to say it. This is not a stats class. I encourage you to give the class a chance because as we look at what the requirements are, all we're asking you to do is read, frame, analyze, interpret, and then give us some great pictures to really defend what you're doing. So speaking of that, the grading assignments. This is a 5-week class. As you look through here, the class is broken into really the chapters of this book. If you kind of read that, chapter 1, intro week, okay, you're telling us who you are, all of those things, and we're clearly in the middle of that right now. Week number 2, framing the problem. We have an assignment number 1. It's a case study brief where you're going to frame what you understand about the problem, okay? All I'm asking you to do is read that particular chapter, take what you've read, frame the problem as you understand it, and we'll move on. The next week is solving the problem. It gets really interesting in week 3 because if you didn't frame the problem and you start trying to solve the problem that hasn't been framed, it gets a little confusing. So make sure the problem that you're framing is something that's specific enough that can be solved. Week 4, communicating and acting on the results. Okay, you framed the problem, you've solved the problem, you're now having to go out of your framing and solving and show someone what you have done. Okay, what does that look like? What are your recommendations? And then when we get to week 5, which is your case study presentation, I think it's 5 or 6 slides that you're going to have to produce based off of the work that you've been doing up to that point. What we're asking you to do is apply the analytics. So it should be really fun in week number 5 because all you're doing is putting it together in one PowerPoint presentation. I am here to help you. If you notice, nothing that I said is get out on the internet and research, pull in all this data, download the statistics piece of Excel, get SAS, get KXEN, get SPSS, all of those crazy things that statisticians do. No, we're building business leaders here, and what you will have in your teams when you go back to your work and you have a business analytics project, you'll have many of those guys doing that work, but your role is to take the output of their process, interpret it, and explain it and create recommendations. And when your senior leadership team says, that sounds good, why should we do that? You can back into the how comes. And the reason why you're going to do that confidently is because you framed it, you solved it, you communicate it, your actions are based off of quantitative information versus qualitative guessing. All right, so if you look down at the bottom of this slide, it's all about assignment number 1, the case study brief, quarter of your grade. Number 2, that is going to be 35% of your grade. And then when you look at the discussions, it's 30% of your grade. What this is telling you is that because this is a 5-week class, it's important for you to stay engaged. It's important for you to not get behind on the assignments. And also, it's important for you to support those learning journals. I want everybody in this class to get honors. There's no reason you should not get honors because, as I said, this is not a right or wrong. This is how are you interpreting the reading and approaching the assignment. So if you drop behind in the discussions and learning journals, you're losing unnecessary points. Okay, so that's all good. Now, when we talk about the grading criteria, okay, you guys are seniors with senioritis, so I don't have to really go through this, but I will give you an example of what I expect in terms of your discussions. I'm expecting at least, 2 to 3 sentences that is addressing the actual question that's being asked. And I'm expecting you to round it out if you can with a question to keep the conversation going with your classmates. I'm also expecting you to respond initially by Wednesday, which is our, the first pose, and I'm expecting you to respond by Sunday with the 2 additional pose. My recommendation to get honors, though, is not responding at midnight on Sunday. I mean, if you do what you have to do, of course, but the key is that it's all about engagement. So the earlier you respond to your classmates, the more ability you give them to respond back to you as well. So as we think about that, I need it to be timely. I need you to answer the question being asked. If you can support it with a quote, or if you can support it with a reference in the class, meaning the book or maybe an external reference, that's all good. And then finally, you have to write professionally. I'm not asking for you guys to write a dissertation. We're not writing papers in our discussion post, but I am asking you to be concise and clear. And then finally, as it relates to thought leadership, that is very subjective for me. It could be a question that you ask. It could be you sharing a little bit insight about your own organization, or it could be you just said something terribly brilliant in a couple of sentences. I'll decide what the thought leadership is. That's the subjective part. But the way to make it less subjective is that if you do have a reference to your post, if you do pose a question to your classmates, you're on a really good path of getting thought leadership. I don't want there to be any confusion. Also, check your email. I sent you some examples of what thought leadership is on that regard. Okay, last piece here. You guys with senioritis, late assignments for exceptional circumstances. I'm not going to really go into very, very much detail on this other than to say we have tornado shelter here, but certainly in the United States, we've had more issues with hurricanes and, I'm down in Texas, so just terrible storms and things of that sort. My recommendation to you guys, if you are impacted by weather and some of these horrific events that's happening around the world, my recommendation is don't check into the class, okay? We have ears on the ground where we already know what's going on. We don't want you to worry about JWI at that point. We will work with you to get back on track. Okay, but if there are other things like you're missing classes and you've missed a couple of weeks and you haven't turned in your assignment, we may ask you to document what your excuse is, because we're all professionals here. We're all in, you guys are taking an MBA program, and I just ask for you to communicate with us if you can. But if there are things that you can't communicate, that's fine. We are your lowest priority when it's a life and death situation, and trust me, we're all human and we will be there for you. But I'm just saying that if you are behind on assignments and things of that sort, we are all working adults for the most part. So I encourage you to just send me a note. Say, hey, Dr. Alford, I'm going to be a little late, etc. I'm not one of those professors that's going to ask you, well, why are you going to be late? That's your business, okay? I give you the benefit of the doubt. It's the honor system, but if you tell me you'll return it in another day, I'm expecting it in another day. So that is pretty much the bulk of the presentation. You have quite a few resources to support you. You have Dr. Joe Anderson, who is the course lead. You have myself, who is your professor. You have a writing coach, Sylvia Bugg. And I want to point out, your writing coach is not about let's say that this is not a disciplinarian thing. This is me trying to get you some free support to say, hey, you guys are, going under your level of expectation in writing. Sylvia can help you get that up high, because I want everyone to get the highest score in this class as possible. And if you don't take advantage of the resources that are available to you, shame, shame, shame. You also have your academic advisor team as well to support. So that's really my presentation today. I know that I said that the questions and answers will probably come in email. I will be trying to reach out to each of you guys. So if you listen to this, please shoot me your telephone number. I would love to speak with you. And that is the presentation for the evening. Thanks, everyone. I am Dr. Alford. I look forward to sharing with you in the class. I look forward to learning more about each of you guys, and I am a resource. Hit me up with an email, a text message, and I will certainly respond back. Okay, take care, everyone.